So welcome to Dress and Drinks, sponsored by the Costume Society of America. We're so excited to have you with us today, as always in our webinar series, Conversations on Dress. I'm Leon Wiebers, and I am your host in this series, and really excited to have our guests here today. I'm a professor of costume design at Loyola Marymount University. And so tonight, our guests are from the Cooper Hewitt and Smithsonian Design Museum. And we begin this month, we will be speaking with, or tonight, we will be speaking with Susan Brown, Alexa Griffith Winton, and Leigh Wishner. Brown and Winton are co-curators of Cooper Hewitt Smithsonian Design Museum's exhibition, A Light, a Bright, The Designs of Dorothy Liebes, and are co-editors of the accompanying book published by Yale University Press. Wishner is a contributor to the publication, and we will learn all about more of this tonight. So Susan is the associate curator and acting head of textiles at the Cooper Hewitt, where she oversees a global collection of over 27,000 textiles and over 2,000 years. Her past exhibitions for the museum include Extreme Textiles, Designing for High Performance, Fashioning Felt, Color Moves, Art and Fashion by Sonia Delaunay, Scraps, Fashion, Textiles and Creative Reuse, Contemporary Muslin Fashions, and Suzie Zuzek for Lilly Pulitzer, The Prints That Made the Fashion Brand. Alexa Griffith Winton is a design historian and educator. She's currently manager, public programs, and interpretation at the Cooper Hewitt. She has researched and published on the work of Dorothy Liebes for over 10 years. Alexa's work has been published in scholarly and popular publications, including the Journal of Design History, Dwell, Journal of the Archives of American Art, and the Journal of Modern Craft. She co-edited A Dark, A Light, A Bright, The Designs of Dorothy Liebes with Brown, and has received research grants from the Graham Foundation, the New York State Council for the Arts, Center for Craft, Creativity and Research, Nordic Culture Point, and the Beverly Willis Architecture Foundation. And lastly, Leigh Wishner is a design historian specializing in modern textiles and fashion. She has worked in the museum field for over 20 years, holding positions at the FIDM Museum, at the Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandising, the Los Angeles County Museum of Art, and at Cora Ginsberg LLC. She received her BA in Art History and Archaeology from Barnard College and her MA in Decorative Arts and Material Culture from the Bard Graduate Center. Leigh has a passion for 20th century fabrics, fashions, and interiors, lecturing extensively on these intertwined subjects. So please welcome all three of them. And our cocktail for the evening is, of course, glitter and glamour. The recipe will be in the chat, and the non-alcoholic virgin version is the Whammaroo. So thank you all for being here tonight. Really excited about this. It's great to see you all. Thank you for joining us today, and let's get going.
Great. Thank you so much for having us, Leon and CSA. So I'm going to ask Alexa and Susan to sort of set the stage for us a little bit.
Sure.
Okay.
Dorothy Liebes was truly one of the most influential designers of the 20th century. I cannot overstate the impact that she had on American interiors and fashion across her prolific 4-decade career. As a little background, Dorothy Liebes was born in Santa Rosa, California in 1897. She studied art at UC Berkeley and art education at San Jose State. And along the way, she had developed an interest in weaving and purchased her first floor loom. So when she came east to get a master's degree in art education at Columbia Teachers College, she had her loom shipped to her here in New York City. And in fact, while she was in school, she sold her weavings to stores like Saks Fifth Avenue to help support her life here in New York. And around the same time, she met Leon Liebes. He was the son of a wealthy department store family in San Francisco. And they married in 1928, but they very quickly fell out over her desire to be a professional weaver. Leon felt that someone of his social stature should not have a wife who worked. and they were not able to resolve this. He was not able to let that go, and Liebes was not able to let go of her passion to work professionally in the design field. So in 1930, after just 2 years of marriage, she left him with nothing but her clothes and her loom and opened her first studio in San Francisco.
So as Susan mentioned, Dorothy Liebes was a California designer and got her start in San Francisco. Once she left Lyon and opened her first studio in 1930, she quickly came to the attention of many architects and interior designers in California and beyond. And she very quickly had to ramp up from just 2 or 3 employees in her studio to 17 in the first year. And it really didn't slow down until the late 50s when she decided to wind down her hand weaving business in lieu of her corporate contracts. So her California identity was really important to her as a designer. And when she was hired to be the director of the decorative arts display for the Golden Gate Exposition in 1939, this wonderful big California World's Fair, she decided she really included many California designers along with other better known American designers and a swath of European designers as well. And she collected all this incredible material, some of which you see before you. The panel on the left is actually Liebes's from 1936. The chair is by Marcel Breuer, and it's part of a suite of furniture that he included at her request in the display, and of his modern molded plywood furniture for Isacon that he designed in London before he came to the US. And then on the right, you have this wonderful Western room, which was designed by the Hollywood interior designer and actor, Billy Haynes. And so she convened all of these wonderful examples of design from all across Europe and the United States for people in California to see, many of whom would be exposed to these designers for the first time.
That tapestry is amazing. I mean, imagining that as a woven object with the lines that go through I'm really curious about the sort of possibly surface treatment of if it might be cording that wraps up around. That's just amazing. And is that actually woven in or reapplied afterwards?
I believe it's a supplementary weft.
I think it is supplementary weft that is just carried in directions that you have to really think about hard when you're weaving.
Yeah.
And it's actually quite large as well. It's about 9 feet tall. So one thing you don't get in a Zoom.
Yeah, yeah.
That's true.
Leigh, I think we can go to the next slide. So that fair really promoted her from a California designer to a nationally and internationally respected design authority. And she continued to become better and better known in the design field, as well as other fields, as Leigh's going to talk about in a little bit, through the 1940s. And after the war ended, after the Second World War ended, she really this was sort of the apotheosis of her fame. And the press started to refer to her very richly textured, beautifully colored, often very shiny and metallic textiles as the Liebes look. And many of these were for very glamorous sort of quasi-public spaces, like this is the Persian room in the Plaza Hotel, and her friend Henry Dreyfuss was redesigning it in 1950 and invited her to create the drapes. And as you can see in the black and white photograph in the center, these windows were enormous. There were 8 of them. They were 20 feet high. So the textiles are really taking over at the scale of architecture. The other thing you can see in the black and white image is in these drapes, the weavers had been asked by Dreyfuss to weave through tiny little surgical lights. And you can kind of just see them twinkling in that image there. And these could be programmed, they were hardwired into a dimmer board and then could be programmed to have different light effects depending on the entertainment. So it could be a fountain, it could be shooting stars, but it was all in this kind of mid-century interpretation of a Persian pleasure garden.
I was going to ask about the little twinkling elements in the photos. Thank you so much. That's incredible.
There were press accounts calling it Samarkand with wattage, which I think is really great.
So good.
So the image on the slide right now is the first class observation lounge on board the SS United States, which was the fastest passenger liner ever built in the United States. And I love it because it encapsulates something about Dorothy Liebes. This lounge had 32 large windows with an uninterrupted view of the ocean, and she created these floor-to-ceiling draperies. And she wanted very much to bring the colors of the ocean into the room, and she got a lot of pushback about it from the interior designers because at the time blue and green were considered to be clashing colors, and cool colors were thought to be depressing for the interior, and there was like a lot of back and forth about this. But ultimately she pushed for it, and she got her way and created a real fad for the blue and green color scheme. But also, when she got involved in these kinds of very large scale design projects, she often identified a really high visibility location to do a dramatic hand weave that would attract the attention of the design press. And then she also provided over 500 yards of power loomed upholsteries for this room that she got a royalty on. So she maintained her entrepreneurial spirit that she had started out with when she was in college, or even before she was in college. Um, yeah, so that sort of leads into an interesting aspect of her career that she did eventually start collaborating with industry to create power loomed translations or interpretations of her fabulously beautiful and fabulously expensive hand loomed fabrics.
Oh, those are stunning. I mean, that color, the way it in the photo, how it almost ombres across, it's really beautiful. And the extra, the sort of little tiny narrow stripes there as well are really wonderful.
So, as Susan mentioned, Liebes was very interested in partnering with industry. Her hand loomed fabrics were incredibly expensive, famously expensive, and it really bothered her that they were so inaccessible to the vast majority of Americans. And she believed very strongly in the power of mass production to increase the standard of living, to increase the quality of design that Americans lived with. And so, from an early point in her career, she was seeking out and getting corporate contracts for mass production. And just very quickly, on the left, we have one of her first collaborations with industry, which was for Goodall Fabrics, a very high quality old fashioned fabric mill in Maine. And they let her come in, and she was really excited to create power loomed interpretations of her hand loom fabric. And she could stay on the mill floor and work with the engineers for weeks at a time, adjusting things till they really met her standards. And then she also was working with fashion collaborations and clients like Jansen, which you see on the right. And this is another way that she is participating in the design conversation of American mid-century modernism. And we're going to hand it over to Leigh now, because fashion is a very unrecognized aspect of Liebes's career, but as Leigh is going to show us, a very, very important one.
So we're starting in with DuPont, but actually I should rewind it just a little bit. But this is an image that came from Dorothy Liebes's scrapbooks, which I'm going to touch on in a second as well. But you see, it's an ad for a fiber that she is developing with one of her bamboo rod textiles, room dividers or window curtains in the back, and that Sunny Hartnett is leaning up against. I believe that's Sunny, and you get this sense of the world of Dorothy Liebes is a fashionable world. And so they used her world as part of their advertising scheme, which is kind of incredible. Okay, here we go. And here's another couple of really, really exciting photos that were profiled in Life magazine. So, you know, the thing that we find very surprising is that nobody has heard of her. And yet she was a color feature in a major publication like Life magazine. how did that happen? Well, I'll show you. Well, first, oh, sorry. Here's just a couple pages from the scrapbooks, because I feel like it's really important to front load this, because the research could not have happened without these scrapbooks, and also the Dorothy Liebes papers, which were digitized during the pandemic and made this entire book project and exhibition project possible. So I just need to tell you that so much of what I was able to uncover about her life in fashion and her fashionable friends was achieved just by flipping through her incredible press clippings and her own scrapbooks that showed just how proud she was of her work in fashion, which is another thing that's really remarkable.
So
So one
Leigh,
of the reasons, oh, I'm sorry, yeah.
question. So, where are the papers held? Are they at the Cooper Hewitt?
They are at the Archives of American Art, which is in the Smithsonian universe. So while they're not Cooper Hewitt property, they were heavily used and borrowed, and they are still on display. Some of them, if you run to the Cooper Hewitt before the 4th, you can still see them. But everybody can go and look through her world, and I always encourage people to do it, especially if you like falling down rabbit holes. It's littered with them. So one of the reasons that we sort of speculate that she's not as much of a name, a famous name anymore, although we've changed that, is because a lot of her work was photographed in black and white. And so you see, I'm showing you also some film-related appearances. Dorothy Liebes did actually work a little bit in the Hollywood sphere. No credits to her name on any films per se, but she did absolutely work on Adam's Rib, was one film. She was also in all these different films in the mid-century period, especially ones that had nightclub scenes. So her fabrics got noticed originally by Hollywood in the late 30s and started appearing in the 40s because they had this great texture and glimmer. And Alexa writes a lot about that in the book, which I also encourage everybody to read. And so you see that there's this enticing texture and glitter, and the thing that's missing from the black and white photos is the color. But you can see on the other side, when you do see it in color, it's still as distinctive. When you see it in black and white, it's still distinctive, you can tell. But when you see it in color, it's like, oh, it's such a world of difference between the black and white and the color. So Liebes really kind of, after the exposition in San Francisco, she started sort of, just basically gathering steam for the rest of her career. And she got a reputation for using really unusual materials, as we've sort of seen. But, cellophane and sequins, clusters of beads, dried flowers, pom-poms, rickrack. One of my favorite pieces in the entire exhibition is just the wefts are rickrack. And there's a whimsy and a fearlessness in like the things that she would do. And, she wouldn't hesitate to try something new. And there was a running joke that, if you stood too close to Dottie's loom, she might try to weave you into it if you weren't careful. She might try to slip you right into that. So, this is the kind of stuff that obviously attracts fashion eyes. And so immediately people were starting to get little bits here and there for hats and purses, especially. You see a Lily Daché turban, which is incredible. Again, what does that look like in color? Well, we get a little sense from the samples on the left side of the screen. Mr. John was also a dear friend of hers, as was Lily Daché. So and Sally Victor used it. She just started off on the right foot. She got herself into Lord & Taylor as well. And from there, it just steamrolled. So I mentioned that little Hollywood teaser. Probably the way that Liebes got into the Hollywood circuit was through her connection to Gilbert Adrian. And it was the material that she sourced in San Francisco's Chinatown, these Chinese brocaded ribbons, that kind of caught his eye because it is an unusual weft material. So he was kind of an unorthodox designer who really wanted to, showcase unusual materials as well. And they forged a very tight friendship. He and Janet Gaynor, his wife, were very close with her. She provided fabrics also for his apartment. But I did also want to show you that she also wore Adrian. So she was not only just supplying materials to her friends, she was getting things from her friends as well. And there were a couple, there's one receipt in her papers for an Adrian chartreuse suit or dress. But there's no other tantalizing clues to tell me, how did she get this Egyptian collar dress into her wardrobe, which you can see. I found that little tiny sliver of the collar in the family photo. And I kind of locked into that and realized that I think that's that Egyptian collar gown that Adrian designed. And yes, it is. And also you can see it in color in a photo in the Unusual Occupations video, which you should go to the Cooper Hewitt website and watch. It shows her in her studio working in her Adrian. So I just think that's something that you all need to know. You can work in Adrian.
Yes, like every day she sat down at her loom.
Like everyday stuff.
Like,
and then in the middle, I want to give a shout out really quick to my friend Martha, who immediately told me, she's like, I used to have that Adrian dress. And so she sent me a photo of it, and I was able to say, yeah, absolutely. Although I think hers is black, but still, it was an exciting discovery.
That's amazing. That is just so amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. And so then this is Adrian's salon, and you can see the clientele that was hanging out, but in the backdrop is this incredible curtains that she had created for his salon in Beverly Hills. And it was this type of high profile placement, like a product placement really, that kind of introduced her to the Hollywood who's who. And so she was working with interior designers like Billy Haynes and William Pullman, and so she got in good with Adrian. Here's a piece that actually I was really excited to handle at LACMA when I was doing an inventory project. We were doing the Adrians. Oh boy, what a chore. And I got to this piece and I was like, oh my God, this is a Dorothy Liebes. It was so exciting. And this was maybe 10 years ago now, so it was in my rearview mirror. But I remember when I started doing this research thinking, oh my gosh, this is the coat, belonged to Gona Volska. It was a eccentric figure, and a client of Adrian's. And this is very similar to the one that Lauren Bacall is wearing here in the Harper's Bazaar feature. So that was exciting.
Leigh, you lead to a question that I have. Since we've talked about how sort of overshadowed Liebe was and how unknown she was in certain ways, how did you come to her? How did you learn about her that then inspired many this?
Oh, sure. I think my first encounter with a Liebes textile was at Bard Graduate Center, my graduate school, and I was a docent for the Women in Design exhibition in 2000. Oh gosh, it was a long time ago. But I think Alexa might remember it. And they had Mexican plaid, and I remember just really feeling like smacked in the face with color, and just that jolt. And so that was my first. My second, I remember also, my second in the wild was at Shangri-La in Honolulu, at Doris Duke's Shangri-La, because there's a lot of, there's a Doris Duke connection as well. And so there's Liebes upholstery and curtains there. And so I remember walking into a room and being like, oh, am I the only person who knows what this is? But yeah, so those were my two gateway in-persons. And then in reading about her, I would read about her in the course of academic basically, the Liebesologist, Alexa Griffith Winton. I read everything that she did on Liebes. So there you go. Yeah. So, and I never will be done with her. That's something I will say. It's just that's how I came to her, and I will never leave her.
Yeah.
So
her work is just incredible. I mean, you're introducing me to her tonight, and her work is amazing. And I've seen, it's so interesting because I've seen these things, but I didn't know who made them or who designed them, and who to attribute them to. And interestingly, at this moment, I'm like, so I bought my condo a couple of years ago from a woman who bought it in the mid, she was the original owner, and I kept one of the window shades, and I'm like, that looks very familiar. So I may have to take the window shade down, and it looks so much like this. And I'm like, I have to look to take it down now and see if there's a tap.
Frozen? Well, truth be told, Liebes did not originate the bamboo and reed shades. Those are of Asian origin, but she certainly made them a huge thing. And there were other people who were doing somewhat similar treatments as well, like Mariah Kipp. But should I keep going and show you more
Yes, please.
incredibly enticing things, or? So this is a moment we are just going to have to bring in Lurex, because that's my other love, and that's how I'm not going to be done with Dorothy Liebes. So, one of the things that Alexa and Susan hinted at is that she was excellent. She was an incredible business person who was excellent at making connections and serving in consulting roles for different companies in non-competing ways that she made them all work together harmoniously. And one of the biggest coups of her career was popularizing and developing fashion colors and schemes for Lurex. The miracle thread, the miracle yarn, which is essentially laminated aluminum, plasticized film, often mylar, not always mylar, but it's a sandwich that keeps that metal from reacting with air, water, and it stays bright. It doesn't smell weird like metal can smell when it's wet. There were a lot of reasons that Lurex was primed for becoming very fashionable. And basically, she was the one who pushed it into fashion and pushed it into places where people would be surprised by it, like swimwear. On the left side is a sample of fabric that was very similar to what Adrian would have liked, but also something similar to what Travis Banton, another Hollywood costume designer, used for this incredible jacket for Lucille Ball in an absolutely awful movie. I do not recommend tracking it down to watch it, but yes, so she wears this jacket, and it was supposed to be, this jacket was also supposed to be featured in Vogue magazine, worn by Merle Oberon, but the night before the photo shoot, Merle Oberon, the jacket disappeared. And they were asking about where it was, but Merle Oberon refused to talk about it. And so they were like, we know it sounds unbelievable, but it's true. We can't find this jacket. So we don't know where it is. If it's out there, hopefully the karma will bring it to me someday. But so that's that. And the jacket was actually supposed to be the introduction of Lurex. It was supposed to be promotional. Like it was going to be the latest material for Vogue to promote, and it went missing. But don't worry, there were plenty and plenty of Lurex ads to follow in every magazine. And you see one on the left, which is promoting the idea of, it's a Rosemary Reed bathing suit. It's promoting the idea that you can wear metal, you can wear lame in the ocean, and you're going to come out just like a goddess. Just like Rita Hayworth, for example, who was actually wearing a Rosemary Reed swimsuit that was made with fabric designed by Dorothy Liebes. So, and that's just a view of my favorite little slice of heaven. That's the Lurex room at the Cooper Hewitt right now. And it sort of is like the perfect way to segue into the the meat of everything, which is her friendship with Bonnie Cashin. So this is just heaven on earth. Actually, I'm going to ask one of you to jump in and tell us about the birthday cake sampler, just really quick.
Sure. As Leigh mentioned, Dorothy Liebes was hired actually in 1946 as the first color stylist for Lurex because she was almost as well known for her color sensibility as for her weaving, and she was very, very consistently called on by the press to make suggestions about color palettes or speak about color. So in this lamination that Leigh described, the adhesive that holds the lamination together of the aluminum and the 2 layers of plastic could be dyed in any color. So it really like blew open the whole notion of what could be metallic beyond gold and silver and plastic to include all of the jewel tones that she used in such profusion in her nightclubs, for example. She did black and white patent leather Lurex. She requested variegated Lurex so that she could make what are called strié fabrics for the interiors market. And she created this beautiful porcelain colors collection, as she called it, which was a range of pastels. And
I forgot that I wanted to show you this. Everybody can see the world of Liebes.
The world of Liebes.
Shiny, colorful world.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Sorry to interrupt you, Susan, but keep going.
That's all right. So the porcelain colors, as she called them, the pastel range, had a much kind of softer shimmer, more like a satin-like quality rather than the really blingy things that you see in some of her work. And she herself wove the color sampler blanket to show off the palette and how all the colors work together. And it was so beautiful. They used it in the print ad for those wonderful, the thread of the story is Lurex ad campaigns, which were, each one is more spectacular than the last. They're just stunning.
So I have a question. The sampler behind the plexiglass shield, is that what it is? Is that
Bonnie, yeah. Behind the plexiglass is the long striped piece. It's a sampler.
yeah, because the
I mean, the equivalent of
plexiglass
sampler. Yeah, blanket.
used
So I was just going to say that. Yeah, it mutes it a little bit. I think all of these things suffer without being up close and personal with them in a gallery. It just they do look flat and they do look kind of less than, but it's still, I mean, that color sensibility is pretty, it's reading through that plexi.
Yeah.
And I love it. This room also has a Bonnie Cashin ensemble that was lent by Stephanie Lake, Bonnie Cashin archive, and that's a salt and pepper capelet outfit. And then the incredible hostess apron by Claire Potter, and the fabric was woven by Darren Pierce, who was one of Dorothy Liebes' studio members, who was very dear to her and very involved in weaving and design, especially fashion designs, because he had his eyes on being a fashion designer at one point. And everybody should Google Mr. Darren and have fun. I will just leave it at that. And let me move on to the next slide because I want to make sure we get through everything. So Bonnie Cashin and Dorothy Liebes. Yeah.
Can I interrupt to say that's a great
place
to plug the digital exhibition platform because we have generated a lot of new research on the members of the Dorothy Liebes studio, including Darren Pierce. And so if you have an opportunity to visit the digital exhibition, you can read short essays on about a dozen of the Dorothy Liebes studio members whose stories we were really, really pleased to be able to surface in this exhibition.
Yeah, that's right. It's an amazing resource, and it's just almost like we can keep adding to it, is what I understand. So I think there'll be more to come. I know I have one more that I want to do, so we're gonna get to that. But
at the end, would you be able to share a link in the chat? Not right now, but at the end, could you share?
Oh yeah.
Perfect.
Absolutely, sure.
Great.
So yes.
No, go ahead. Carry on.
Okay, so I'm just going to jump into the Bonnie and Dottie connection, which was incredibly strong. They met in Hollywood for sure, when Bonnie Cashin was a costume designer at 20th Century Fox. And apparently, as legend has it, she spied a fabric on a chair on a set and was like, I need to make a jacket out of that. And so that's how those two women got connected. And when Liebes actually moved to New York, that was when Bonnie Cashin was also resettling there to decide to become a fashion designer. And so they were just thick as thieves from the first moment. They overlapped a little bit in the Joe Beckman's. The Joe Beckman company was the originator of Lurex. So she probably enlisted Bonnie Cash, and she enlisted a whole bunch of her friends, Claire McCardle, Claire Potter, Nettie Rosenstein, to name just a few. And it was Claire Potter who came up with the term, or actually, no, it was when she said, these are my whammaroo colors. When they're talking about it in one of the thread of the story is Lurex conversation ads. She says they're whammaroo colors, and that also stuck with me. It's just that she had even this like this. She had a vocabulary for color, and she had a vocabulary for Lurex, like that she actually put a list together of vocabulary that advertisers and merchants should use in their advertising to make it sound even more attractive than it is. So back to the exhibition, this wonderful piece of Bonnie Cashin's Skirtings, Inc., the collaboration between her and Liebes, where Liebes supplied incredible fabrics and Cashin whipped them into different types of skirts. They were meant to be collector's items and rather expensive, actually, and rarefied, I should say. But they were also sort of a casual hostess ensemble. So you see Gypsy Rose Lee and Bonnie Cashin, who's wearing her own design, which is probably made out of a sari. And she's wearing her blanket wrap skirt. And we have it in the exhibition, very, very similar color match and everything. So you get the sense of this woman who was a burlesque artist wearing this skirt that really looks like it just can fall apart, which that to me is something that I'm sure she chose that with that kind of tongue-in-cheek in mind. Let's see. Oh, and then my baby. He's from working there about this project. I decided it would behoove me to go back into the Cashin section of her storage and do some poking around. And when I did, I was delighted to come out with these two pieces, which were really fairly crucial to my understanding of her work and their work together. And I'm just so happy to see them in the exhibition. They look phenomenal together. Their coat is from '64, and I think she described it as a Bernousi coat. And it's this really nubby, heavy linen. And it's an upholstery fabric. So that's the other thing about Liebes is when you think something's for the walls, it really could be for your body and vice versa. The only way that it wouldn't work really is with the bamboo. It's like can't wear, I mean, unless you're being very avant-garde and like Victor and Rolf or something, I don't know. But yeah, so and the photograph of the model in front of the relief at the Museum of Natural History, I love the connection also to their weekends were often spent like going up and down Fifth Avenue to galleries and museums and soaking up a lot of different cultural influences. And basically they were just hungry and greedy for beauty and seeing art. So that's I like that as a connection to what they like to do on their time off together.
These are incredible. That poncho is so beautiful. Wow.
Yes, it is, and it's just it's a very, very special piece. It has Lurex in it as well, and so there's this little There's little, it's variegated lyrics, striae, and it's just it's like little fireflies are kind of dancing around in there. You just see it every once in a while. That's the thing, is you have to get off axis to see a lot of things with her fabrics. They have to be at the right angle for it to like come alive. It's so special. And I'm going to end with this incredibly special piece so that we can have time for questions and conversation. But so there's cations, and then there's cations. And so this to me was the most special piece, and I'm going to try not to cry. But this is installed in the exhibition. It is a cash cape on loan from the family. And it just brings everything together. It is the cape that she wore to her retrospective in 1970. It's the one she chose to wear. And then obviously she kept it, which I think is really terrific. And it was also illustrated in the catalog for the exhibition. And then the little note from Bonnie Cashin, dearest Dorothy, it's Dorothy Day. We're so proud of you. You've given so much love to all of us, and you're its reflection. And I just think that that's a beautiful way to be celebrated by your friend while you're still alive. That is the touchstone for me, and that's how I also was able to end my chapter. It just felt like this perfect exclamation point on the whole thing. So yeah, so I don't know if there's any time for questions or anything, but
yes,
I cannot tell you how much I've loved working on this project with these two women right here. And so I just want to start with that.
And when we invited Leigh to contribute to the book, we had no idea how much greater a contribution she would make beyond her wonderful, wonderful chapter to being truly a partner through the whole project.
Thank you.
I'm
sorry, I tried. I didn't get my tissue. What was wrong?
Awesome.
I have a drink, but no tissue.
This is just so wonderful. I mean, for so long, the field of dress was folded into deck arts, and it's really the founders and the forerunners of CSA and Costume Society that really, really worked diligently to bring the focus of dress unto itself. And so I think this is really actually a celebration of not only the really intimate relationship between deck arts and fashion, and it's really beautiful, and to really focus on the textiles in ways of Liebes, but also how Cashin used them. It's just happiness and joy all over. It is so amazing, and Lurex sometimes these days I think gets such a bad rap. It's like, ooh, Lurex. It's sort of like a dirty word. It's really,
and that's an interesting thing. It was happening during her tenure that it was starting to already have that reputation. So it's like if you push something too hard, or not too hard, but if it gets to a saturation point, and people obviously wind up having a adverse reaction to it at some point. But so she had to start counteracting that in her own involvement with the company before they parted ways. I also realized I didn't mention that she also worked for DuPont, like hardcore for DuPont for a long time, and Orlon, Antron, Dacron. Those are fibers that she figured out how to use in the marketplace for different enterprises like knitwear and
yeah. Okay, so
bedspreads. So, and the I have to say about her, final thing that I have to say about her that I just absolutely love is that she was not a snob, and she wanted people to have the best things for the best price. And that meant translating her high-end pieces into mass market, and that was for the good of the world. So
we have thank you. We have a question in the chat, and then I have a few other ones as well myself. So first is from Marcy Froelich. I love her color sense, and I'm so glad to know about her. I'm also curious about the other textiles in the Cooper Hewitt, and I know there's a theater collection there. Are there textiles in that collection?
There is not much of a theater collection at Cooper Hewitt. You may be thinking of the Museum of the City of New York, which has an extensive theater collection. We do have some stage designs, works on paper, but that's about the extent of it at Cooper Hewitt.
Excellent. Some questions I have in terms of this. Wow, where to start? How much of this do you have in the collection at the Cooper Hewitt right now in terms of Liebes' work, and or are you working with like their estate? You know, how many pieces specifically of hers do you have?
Yeah, at Cooper Hewitt, we have about 200 examples, most of them sample size, but several very large and beautiful pieces. And I do like to give a huge debt of gratitude to Ralph Higbee. Ralph was Dorothy Liebes' studio manager and the one person who really relocated with her from San Francisco to New York. And after she died, Ralph very diligently divided up the contents of her studio and gave 100 of her handwoven samples and 4 or 5 big showroom panels to museums across the country, including the Metropolitan Museum, Smithsonian American History, the Museum of Arts and Design, the Art Institute of Chicago, the Oakland Museum of California.
Oh, wow, fantastic.
Yes. Yay, Ralph.
And I remember at the very end, Bonnie Cashin was involved as an executor in her estate, and they were for a while trying as hard as they could with lawyers' help to make a small museum teaching collection and keeping it all together. But it didn't happen that way, and I think it's not a bad thing that it didn't happen that way, because it's true. She has meaty little chunks in all the design institutions in this country, which is fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And in terms of the exhibition, we're absolutely delighted to have loans from most of those places. It's very much a New York City Museum tribute that there are things on view from the Museum of the City of New York, the New York Historical Society, FIT, the Museum of Arts and Design, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and Cooper Hewitt, along with the Art Institute of Chicago and Smithsonian American History and several private lenders.
That's amazing. So this exhibit is about to close, yes. So we're on, so dash, if you were in New York, do not wait, run tonight to the Cooper Hewitt, stand in line tomorrow morning and see this, and acquire the book. Is the book still, so do you have, is the book purchasable online or through the Cooper Hewitt bookstore, shall we say?
Yes, absolutely. Shop at cooperhewitt.org.
Wherever you get your fine art books.
We can support the Cooper Hewitt rather than,
Right.
online, ginormous shopping spree center.
And the photography that the Cooper Hewitt embarked on for this project is also worth the shout out, because it's phenomenal to see the detail of her weaves so crystal clear. And you can really appreciate the materials and the structure, which is something I didn't mention about her, and something that I think is one of the reasons I really love her and connect with her so well. I feel like I can understand the weaving when I look at it. I see what's happening. It's straightforward in ways, and it's the unexpected things are mostly in the color and the pattern. Not to reduce her too much, but just to say that I find her accessible as somebody who doesn't weave. I can really
She herself said,
start to understand it, and I love that about her. She's very transparent.
Yeah, she herself said, like, the simpler the structure of the weaving, the greater the freedom for your imagination to play with color and texture. and materials, which is what she truly loved.
Nice, excellent. As we start to wrap up, I just would like to say thank you so much to all three of you. Do you have any parting comments that you would like before we close down? Thank you for this wonderful, wonderful experience today. It was really beautiful.
I think
My
the only
absolute
thing
pleasure.
Yeah, the only thing that I would like to say is that, when Susan and I were putting together this exhibition, we wanted to show the full spectrum of Liebes's work, which is, far beyond kind of the what she is mostly known for these days. But we knew fashion was an important part of that. But as Susan mentioned, we didn't have the full picture of how important, and Leigh really she made a huge contribution with that research, and we're so thankful for it. So thank you, Leigh.
I had no idea what I was getting myself into either in terms of, I thought, oh, this will be a short little tiny chapter because there's, oh my gosh, no, I'll be here for another few years. Thank you very much. So, and she was also, I didn't even get into her own personal style because that's a whole nother ball of wax. But she was an incredible woman and I admire her very much. And I'm glad that so many people have gotten to appreciate her and experience her world as a result of the scholarship and the curation of my friends here.
That's fantastic. Thank you all so much for today. It's been a great pleasure to have this conversation with you this evening, and I look forward to seeing you all very soon. So have a good night, everyone, and thank you, Alexa, Leigh, and Susan, for all of your work.